Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this conference this morning. I want to start by reminding us, for some of those who may remember, and for those who are too young to remember, to tell you that during the era of military rule, there was a program that was introduced into this country. It was called War Against Indiscipline. Why? W-A-I, for that was the acronym. It focused mostly on the issue of queuing, because a simple matter, what you take for granted today, because you have a boarding pass, you can go and queue and get on an aircraft and there'll be a seat in the plane for you. Wasn't always like that. Even with your boarding pass in your hand, you had to struggle and fight at the foot of the aircraft to get in and find a seat in the aircraft. Not to mention the issue of getting in a lift. We'll all go and crowd around the entrance into the lifts, and without even letting those that are coming out to come out, and there'll be a fight and a struggle always. So the military introduced this thing they call WAI, War Against Indiscipline. And they enforced it with koboko and frog jumps and all kinds of dehumanizing methods. But perhaps maybe we needed that because we soon started to comply. But what it does tell me is that, this is interwoven with the simple fact of discipline and culture. So it does differ from place to place. But even as it differs, there are certain norms, or if you like, common norms or universal norms that really define what etiquette and good discipline is. Now, we know that in certain parts of Nigeria, as a junior, you have to prostrate before your senior. We know that in other parts, as a maid or a wife, you have to genuflect, maybe even kneel to save a meal or water or drinks to your husband or to guests. We know also that a lot of times we have to take off our cap and bow before we can shake hands with a senior. And of course, junior officers must click their heels, stand at attention, and salute senior officers. All these are aspects of proper etiquette, and which simply means being polite or being respectful. But these norms in Nigeria are being eroded, and they are being eroded by the invasion of foreign cultures and even the social media. We know that in a place like the United States of America, nobody looks at you and calls you by anything but your first name. Even your son, your child, tries to call you by your first name. It is not common in Nigeria, it's not common in Africa. We give respect to those and we never call them by their first names. So when I was the governor of Akwa Ibom State, I started something, I called it EARCOM. That was the acronym. It stands for Ethical and Attitudinal Reorientation Commission. And what I asked them to do was just start by teaching the basics of how to say please, how to say thank you, and how to say sorry, because it is lacking in our culture. So sometimes this culture has to be learned by social means, other times it has to be enforced, unfortunately. And the means of enforcing can be very unpalatable sometimes. So it pleases me tremendously today to find that this young lady, Etienne Akpanusong, from my state, whose parents I know very well, the mother is here, has taken this matter seriously to the point where she has now decided that she wants to teach etiquette to our people. And she has in fact written a book, My Etiquette and I. And she has established an NGO for this purpose. And I believe her efforts was recommendation and should be supported. So I want to believe that this colloquium will achieve the purpose for which it has been organized. But before, let me bring this to a conclusion by telling you two short stories of what the lack of civility, the lack of etiquette can bring about. Several years ago, there wasn't Cross River State, there was Southeastern State, and Akwa Ibom was part of that. I was living in Kaduna, and I was given a rather serious message to go and deliver to the coordinator of the NYSC, National Youth Service Corps program in Southeastern States. I flew down through Lagos to Calabar and went to the office of the coordinator. I walked in, there was a young man sitting at the reception, and he was reading his newspaper. I greeted him. I want to believe he answered, but he never looked up from his newspaper. So I introduced myself. I told him I came with a message for the coordinator. Without looking up from his newspaper, he said to me, he's not around. I waited for further explanation. There was none. So I started to explain to him, please, I've come all the way from Kaduna, and he's not around, is he gone now, is he come? Before I could finish, he jumped up with the newspaper, shouting, hey, come and see, come and see. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to his colleague at the next bench. Something in the article he was reading in the newspaper. I was much younger than I am now, and far less patient. So I went up to him, snatched the newspaper out of his hand. The next thing he did, without even wanting to know who I was, he engaged me in a physical fight. The rest of the story is not worth telling. Now, I'll tell you another story that happened many, many, many years ago also. I went to England. In those days, you will get into a lift and there'll be an operator who will close the door, and as you enter, you announce your floor, and he was the only one that had access to the panel that will instruct the elevator or the lift way to stop. So I went in, others came in. Then this young Nigerian came in and shouted 5. And we went into the elevator, went up, stopped at 2, stopped at 4, didn't stop at 5. And, you have passed my floor. And nobody looked at him. His first lifts went up, stopped at other floors, got to the top, and started to come down. I decided I want to see the end of this drama because I knew something was going to happen. We came down. He passed 5 again. He said, you have passed my floor again. The man just ignored him till we got to the floor, and he came out cursing, shouting, and I called him. I said, are you a Nigerian? He said, yes. I said, let me just suggest to you, enter this other lift. And when you enter, say 5, please. You will see a difference. And believe me, I don't know whether he believed me or not, but I know he went into the next lift, and I watched, and the lift stopped at 5. So he must have said, please. So it just shows that certain things people take for granted, and if you don't conform, believe me, they just completely ignore you. But because I wanted to tell you 2 stories, but because the theme of this colloquium is the effect of incivility on Africa's development, I find it necessary to tell you yet another story, which has to do with the campaigns that led up to the last election, presidential election in February 2023. We have a group that's called the Compatriots. We invited every candidate and pleaded, please, in the next few months, one of you, whether we like it or not, one of you will become our president. Don't destroy him before he becomes the president. But the campaign was not based strictly on issues, but on character. And there was a lot of character assassination. So at the end of the day, I'm telling you this because not so long ago, I was invited by a Nigerian Institute of Professional Marketers to come and give a keynote address on how to sell Nigeria to the outside world post-2023 election. It's not an easy paper to write because you know that at the end of the elections, we did a number of things. One, is that we disabled our president, who in fact is our chief marketer. We disabled him because he was called all kinds of names, a thief, a this, a that, a the other. And that's what the general public, particularly the international world, will hold on to. We also damaged the country itself by shouting it is corrupt, it is not secure. So who wants to come and invest in an insecure and a corrupt country? We discredited our electoral process. So everybody looks at us as, well, Trump called us the name, which I can't repeat here, but we know what he called us. But unfortunately, we say he was wrong. And then finally, we also ridiculed our judiciary, our judicial system. So you can see that the lack of civility, the lack of just common respect or regard for whatever you like, common norms that should relate one to another, can have a severe effect on the development in Africa. So I want to hope that the panelists, as we discussed today, and the keynote address, will tell us how not to continue to be uncivil, how not to continue to operate with lack of etiquette, because if we continue, we are not going to help us, we are not going to help Nigeria. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your presence here.
Another round of applause for His Excellency, Architect Obong Victor Atta, a man who is one of my earliest influence in speech making. So I still remember your last speech in office, one of your last speeches in office at the visit of former President Obasanjo. Even President Obasanjo was in love with that speech. Thank you so much, sir. It's my delight to very quickly recognize the very distinguished presence of the delectable Dr. Mrs. Obiageli Ezekwesili, former two-time minister and former vice president of the World Bank. Please, a round of applause. We also have in our midst Dr. Dauda Aliu Biu, the Corps Marshal of the Federal Road Safety Commission, who is here represented by Corps Commander S.B. Akande. Please, you're welcome, sir. We also have in our midst a representative of the chairman of the FCT Universal Basic Education, Dr. Alassane Sule. He is here represented by the Director of Teacher Professional Development, Mrs. Jacqueline Amasike. Please, a round of applause. Very quickly, media, please, let Etiquette Africa documentary play. Few minutes, please just view this and I'll be back.
Africa, a continent of vibrant cultures, rich traditions, and diverse people. In the midst of this diversity lies a common thread: the importance of civility, behavioral excellence, and patriotism. This is where the Etiquette Africa initiative steps in. Founded in 2022, Etiquette Africa initiative was born out of a vision to instill a sense of pride, respect, and responsibility among Nigerians and Africans.
I've always had a knack for good manners and proper behavior. I grew up in a home where respect was paramount, and I simply wanted to see the same replicated in the society. A pivotal moment for me was when I traveled out of Africa for the first time. It was about 12 or 13 years ago when I visited the UAE, and I very easily observed how there was mutual respect between motorists and pedestrians. I realized at that point that we were not as mindful and considerate towards one another in Nigeria and other parts of Africa I had previously visited. I thought at that point that I needed to do something to contribute to societal development.
We launched the Etiquette Africa Club activities to create a platform for sustainable personal development in regards to refinement, confidence building, leadership, and so on. This club empowers its members to navigate social interactions with grace and respect, preparing them for success.
The journey began formally during my NYSC year when I took up a personal community development service project as a corper. I included etiquette in the skills that I taught the young ones in secondary schools across FCT. It was so well received that I realized this is something that needed to continue. A few years after my NYSC, I took to social media and began sharing tips on etiquette and manners. This metamorphosed into a finishing school, and today we have Etiquette with Eti Academy, which over 6 years has been offering services to both individuals and corporate organizations.
Etiquette Africa goes beyond basic manners, focusing on grooming future leaders who embody excellence in all aspects of life. We believe that true leadership begins with self-discipline and a commitment to personal and professional growth.
I wanted to do much more, not just as a business endeavor, but by way of contributing to societal development. We realized we needed a platform that could be more inclusive, allow more people, corporate organizations, and even government be involved in this endeavor of promoting civility in Nigeria and across Africa. That is how Etiquette Africa initiative came about. And just like I did during my NYSC year, we decided to utilize education as a tool for societal transformation.
I'm the president of Etiquette Africa Club of my school, and as a member of Etiquette Africa Club, I've benefited a lot, such as how to make a good first impression, how to conduct myself like a lady, how to eat right, how to be confident, and how to be a good public speaker. As a leader, I've been able to impact my club members and my school at large with knowledge I've gotten from Etiquette Africa Club.
Streetiquette. Streetiquette is a Vox Pop series where we take etiquette to the streets. We sample the opinions of citizens on different etiquette-related issues and seize the opportunity to educate.
Hello, it's a beautiful day of Streetiquette. Streetiquette is proudly brought to you by Etiquette with Eti. I'm your preferred etiquette coach, Lady Eti, and on today's episode, we are discussing eating in public places.
By celebrating African heritage and promoting active citizenship, Etiquette Africa instills a sense of patriotism and pride in one's identity.
Being part of this initiative has made me more aware of my role in shaping the future of my community, my country, and Africa as a whole.
Since its inception, Etiquette Africa has reached millions of individuals across the continent, igniting a positive cultural shift and inspiring a new generation of leaders. Our educative pep talk series on TV is viewed weekly by millions in Africa. Our secondary school sensitization has taken us to 65 schools in Nigeria, sensitizing thousands of Nigerian youths on the importance of civility. Etiquette Africa Club is mentoring and grooming refined leaders of the future African society.
Our journey has just begun because we envision a society where behavioral excellence and patriotism are ingrained in the fabric of African society. We invite you all to join us in this endeavor of promoting civility, because civility, which can otherwise be called love, is good for everyone.
In a world where civility is often overlooked, the Etiquette Africa initiative stands as a beacon of hope, reminding us that small acts of kindness, respect, and patriotism can create a ripple effect of positive change across Africa and beyond.
Thank you very much, very amiable Master of Ceremonies, for the honor of the introduction and inviting me to deliver this keynote address. The grand patron of Etiquette Africa and chief host, His Excellency Obong Victor Atta, former executive governor of Akwa Ibom State, who today embodies some of the finest qualities of statesmanship: integrity, civility, decorum, patriotism, care and concern for his country and his people. For which reason, the international airport in Uyo was named after him, not posthumously, but when he is still alive in our midst, Your Excellency. Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, former Honorable Minister of Education and an international civil servant who works in the World Bank. My brother, Mr. Femi Adesina, Senior Special Assistant to former President Muhammadu Buhari on media and publicity. My brother, Dr. Linus Okorie, President of Gotni Leadership Center here in Abuja. Our eminent media and public relations personalities, Mr. Cyril Stober of NTA, and Mrs. Eugenia Abu, my sister and classmate in Zaria. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the Fourth Estate, that's the media, and the organizers of this important event. I also have the privilege to bring my son along to meet you and to learn from a discussion. So Suleiman is over there. You know, I brought him here to see you. Good morning, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to deliver this keynote address on the topic, the effects of incivility on Africa's development. I am torn between making a PowerPoint presentation and delivering a set-piece standard lecture. But I opted for the latter in view of the importance of the topic and the need to present a fairly detailed exposition on such a very critical topic from the perspective of developing and building of personal and group relationships. Before I speak to the subject, however, I would like to seize this opportunity to thank you all for honoring the invitation of Etiquette Africa to attend this meeting. I would like in particular to thank the organizers, especially Lady Etienne, for making this excellent arrangement and affording us the opportunity to explore into such an important subject matter. Having made these necessary overtures as required by protocol and general rules of civility, I would now venture to speak on the topic of the day. Let me begin by quoting these famous words by late President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, who said, I quote, "So let us begin anew. So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always a subject of proof. In addition, in order to reinforce this powerful and philosophical remark, I would like to remind us of the words of Mary Wolseley Montagu, who noted that civility costs nothing and buys everything. An exploration of civility and its nexus with development in Africa has been treated to some extent by scholars in writings on development, globalization, sustainable development, the application of technology, social media, and other frameworks. In order to save time, I shall not go into the details of these scholarly works, but I will just mention that in relation to Africa, today, our continent is at the crossroads. It is poised between greatness and continued stagnation, as well as between prolonged peace and never-ending strifes and conflicts. To attain peace, security, prosperity, sustainable development, and other positive virtues, Africans must become attuned to the observance of basic behavioral patterns and traits that are underpinned by civility and other universally accepted norms of interpersonal and group relationships. The lack of civility in our routinized endeavors has created situations of unrest, intolerance, conflicts, mistrust, suspicion, rivalry, antagonism, hate, and even outright aggression against each other. Today, our conversations and perceptions are disproportionately shaped by the social media. Hence, we find ourselves responding to or influenced by adverse comments and abusive, hate-filled diatribes expressed against each other, against countries or their governments, against national leaders, against religious beliefs, against other ethnic groups, and so forth, which tend to create tension with the potential of destabilizing our societies. And I think that has been very ably and masterfully put forward by His Excellency Obong Victor Atta in his statement. Incivility, therefore, is manifested in social unrests, the vandalization of infrastructure and facilities, attacks on institutions, and destruction of public property, theft of public goods, corruption in the workplace and in businesses, deliberate obstruction of justice, and undermining of the rule of law, and various other traits and conducts that have the capacity to create chaos and unrest in our countries, thus taking us back into the dark ages of barbarism and unmitigated violence. Incivility is also capable of undermining our democratic values and governance systems. Where intemperance is the order of the day, basic political functions like elections and the transfer of power cannot be smoothly conducted, thereby rendering our societies unstable and in a state of perpetual dysfunction. Development is occasioned, among other things, by productivity and rationalization of labor, capital, and resources. Where the conditions for the fulfillment of such tasks are absent, owing to the negative behaviors of the individuals involved in such enterprises, it becomes impossible to expect growth and positive performance of the economy. Under such situations, the prospects of investment and conduct of beneficial business transactions become dimmer and more remote. In the light of such reflections, and with the examples to guide our deliberations this morning, it becomes apparent for us to ask, or it becomes pertinent for us to ask these questions. Why should we deem civility an important factor in the development of Africa? Why should a behavioral trait that recognizes the intrinsic value of others, which should come naturally to us, to everyone, become so essential in determining the path towards Africa's development? The short and simple answer or explanation is that civility establishes the space and provides the ambience in which work or business can be conducted successfully without the encumbrances of distrust, mutual disrespect, or suspicion. In such a situation, respect, circumspection, and deference are easily established or cultivated. That in turn would lead to the development of mental, temperamental, as well as physical connections along the lines of beneficial attachments to specific or general interests that could translate into mutual accomplishments of desired outcomes between or among parties. Consequently, we might be tempted to ask ourselves the following questions. What is the meaning of civility? Why should this intangible but indispensable manifestation of character matter in establishing frameworks for doing business or even the attainment of set objectives in any given situation? What are the essential ingredients or manifestations of civility? Can civility and protocol be equated as similar or closely related? Are civility and etiquette the same or different character manifestations? I think we have enough questions to last us the whole day trying to answer them. Briefly, therefore, civility is defined simply, and I quote, as the act of showing regard for others by being polite. This is a simple behavioral pattern that defines what civility is. Like our MC said in his remarks, civility was derived from the Latin word civilis, meaning relating to public life or befitting a citizen, which in other words means being friendly and nice to everyone. Thus, being civil or showing civility can encompass several traits, among which are politeness, courtesy, courteousness, good manners, gentlemanliness and gentlewomanliness in that case, chivalry, gallantry, graciousness, consideration, respect, gentility, urbanity, cordiality, geniality, pleasantness, affability, etc. Of course, the opposite of civility can be discourtesy, rudeness, incivility, coarseness, ill-mannered, abusive, intemperate, obscenity, etc. Civility is an aspect of social progress that is manifested in various areas of endeavor, such as commercial transactions, interpersonal relationships in the workplace, office and market situations, the military and the police organization, and all other organized and structured entities that are ruled by certain approved behavioral traits to ensure their smooth proceedings, behavioral traits, protocols, and codes of conduct. Conferences like this and meetings are guided by established rules and etiquettes and regulations to ensure their smooth proceedings and uninterrupted progress, leading to the arrival at desired outcomes and objectives. As such, rules of procedure are universally obeyed and adopted in such meetings that are underpinned by courteous behavior towards other participants and the observance of civility by the participants towards each other in order to ensure that everything proceeds smoothly and successfully. And I'm sure Dr. Executive will be a party to the observance of rules of procedure in conferences, in international meetings. Corporate culture is also underpinned by observance of civility. There are codes of conduct and rules of behavior in boardrooms, the simplest of which is the serving of refreshments, such as tea or coffee, drinks, water, and so forth, at intermittent intervals during board meetings or other important functions. Such practices create the ambience in which successful deals and transactions can be pulled off while conveying an image of civilized attribute of the organization. Such practices are indispensable in attracting clientele or establishing a niche for the corporation in a competitive environment where every added advantage is required to place you over and ahead of your competitors. Absenting civility from the above scenarios or any other group engagements would translate into chaos, disorder, intemperance, disobedience, lawlessness, systemic breakdown, aggrandizement of space and privileges, loss of vision and mission, dilution of responsibilities, loss of respect, and various other negative traits that could conduce towards severe or complete dysfunction of the organization or the society. Having civility as a baseline trait to be observed voluntarily and as a matter of ingrained habit will automatically translate into orderliness, punctuality, efficiency, conscientious behaviors, obedience, and other positive attributes that will contribute to the growth and development of any undertaking or enterprise. The cost of incivility in any group dynamics is therefore the retardation of progress and rendering difficult or impossible orderly attainment of organizational objectives that are predicated on the discharge of duties and assumption of personal responsibilities when things go awry or wrong. Beyond being just a metaphor or a simple personal behavioral pattern, civility encompasses mental, emotional, and spiritual experiences that define our capacity to maintain as well as to demonstrate empathy towards others by showing respect to them. This state of mental and spiritual disposition also marks the beginning of rationality in us, which is to say, to expect a reciprocal treatment from others as contained in the saying, "Do unto others as you would want others to do unto you." Civility, therefore, is the beginning of wisdom and the culmination of both physical and temperamental development of our beings. As such, its application in everyday life means creating the space for opportunities to be explored, whereby objectives established in personal or corporate life can be easily accomplished based on shared or mutual values that are common to all mankind. Now, in business, as in all other beneficial societal functions or undertakings, the bottom line of success is trust. This, in turn, is cultivated through intercourse or engagement in transactions that are either aimed at bringing returns and benefits or at creating conditions and opportunities from which certain expectations may arise or accrue. In this regard, the development of societies, without exception, is predicated on the reasonable and responsible discharge of obligations and meeting of commitments, whether contractual or others, that are aimed at creating fulfillment or granting satisfaction to the parties involved. From this, then, it becomes logical that interactions between and among actors in any given situation should lead to mutual regard and reciprocal respect, without which no progress can be made towards reaching a satisfactory ending to any transaction. Connecting such a state of affairs to Africa, it should be reiterated that since the early part of the 19th century, the general perception of our people, especially by Europeans, is that of unmitigated savagery and brutish existence, almost in the state of nature, with no laws governing our daily functions. Our collective endeavors were therefore consigned to the realm of nature, almost at an equidistance between the world of the wild animals and semi-civilized beings that are at the bottom of the human evolutionary ladder. It is thus pertinent to recall the novel by Mr. Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, set in the Belgian Congo in the 19th century, in which the interplay between light and darkness, knowledge and ignorance, civilization and savagery were portrayed as the connecting reality and distinguishing features between the civilized white man, represented by Mr. Marlowe, and the degenerate African societies, displaying the unmitigated embodiment of the state of nature. This perception of retarded progress and unfulfilled development is still, sadly and unfortunately, associated with Africa to some extent, whereby the continent has become the playground of every commerce to take or plunder resources as much as their circumstances or abilities would allow. The incidence or phenomena of crude oil theft in the Niger Delta region, the large-scale illegal mining of gold and lithium in Zamfara and Nasarawa states, and illegal logging that is reported to be going on almost all over the country, are manifestations of the perception that we Africans are simple, unsophisticated, and lowly human beings who are not given to profound thinking about their interests and the future hopes and conditions of their people. The same story is replicated in virtually all the countries of Africa south of the Sahara, where unequal relationships have been established between Africans who own the land and the resources and external actors who come in to reap these resources by every means imaginable, most especially by bribing officials or creating insecurity under whose cover they conduct their nefarious operations. We need not look further than the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, Somalia, Mozambique, Sudan, South Sudan, Mali, etc., and even here in Nigeria, to discover the disregard with which Africans are held by outsiders in terms of their roles in fueling conflicts and exploitation of our weaknesses to further their agendas. The lack of stability in Africa in this case has led to the prevalence of corruption and all forms of corrupt practices that have so far defied any remedies, whether legal or institutional, since it is this corruption that is fueling the plunder of Africa's resources. Instability that has been translated into shameless pandering to individual greed and inordinate lust for material wealth has truncated Africa's development and mortgaged the future of the continent, whereby generations yet unborn will be saddled with the consequences of our actions or inaction, as the case may be, to deal with corruption and defy its tantalizing temptations. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to note that according to the Institute for Civil Civic Relationship of the University of Santiago in the United States, they said civility includes not only the notions of courtesy and politeness, but also such matters as social relationships and proper conduct in human relationships. For some, civility is the essential glue that holds society together. It involves such important issues as friendship, altruism, responsibility, dignity, and justice. Whether we adopt Aristotle's view of civility as a mutual feeling of goodwill that is based on selfless extension of consideration for others, or that of Thomas Hobbes, who believed that humans are incapable of sympathy with the interests of others, and that humans are ultimately motivated by self-interest in all their acts. The bottom line for us is that we must extend our personal traits and inherited values to encompass the larger objectives and interests of others with whom we live together. This means that we may settle for the position adopted by David Hume, who believed that humans are naturally sympathetic with our benevolence or willingness to act selflessly, guided by such things as reason. This will definitely dovetail with the expectations of basing our actions on the approval or approbation of our neighbors and those with whom we have cause to interact in our day-to-day affairs. In such a situation, our behavioral patterns must conform to the general or specific needs of our society and the needs of meeting certain expectations, such as progress and development, by eschewing such negative traits as corruption, nepotism, the abuse of privileges, the exhibition of lawlessness, and intolerance towards others. For Africa to progress and march forward along the path of development, we as a people must first love ourselves and each other and express this sentiment in orderly behavior, both on rational assessment of our immediate environment and circumstances. It is only by doing so that we should be able to establish civility at the core of our interpersonal or group relationships, which in turn should lead us towards respecting each other and cultivating a purposeful and deliberate strategy towards becoming a peaceful and prosperous continent. I thank you all for listening so attentively. Thank you.
Please clap one more time for His Excellency Ambassador Usman Serikin. I listened attentively, and I particularly liked the definition from the University at Santiago because it tends to be all-encompassing. It draws a nexus between our behavior as human beings and its reflection on society. Very few days ago, I read about Iceland, where people sleep with their cars not shut, homes not shut. And I believe that with initiatives like this, it is possible in Nigeria. Please, a round of applause. Very quickly, I want to recognize the distinguished presence of the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, Malam Lanre Issa Onilu, who is represented by a Deputy Director of the establishment, Mr. Ebele Okonkwo. Please, around Mrs. Ebele Okonkwo. Thank you so much. It didn't come with any honorific. Thank you. It's also my delight to recognize a man I call the signature Red Man Socks, Dr. Linus Okorie, President Godney Leadership Center. Please, a round of applause. Dr. Linus, I must mention, when I knew you were coming, I had prepared a red socks because they say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. But in packing, I switched bags and I left one leg of the socks in the other bag. But next time, I'm sure I'll catch up. Please, a round of applause. All right, very quickly, housekeeping. I am made to understand that certain people are asking for a program of events. We've gone tech. So please, if you have this, scan this, please. Your internet has to be on, and then it will take you to the program. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're about having the panel session, and we have a moderator. But I must tell you about this moderator. He has over 30 years experience in the broadcast journalistic industry. This man is a metaphor for broadcast and journalistic excellence. I hear that even after retirement, he was still called upon to read the news. I'm sure you already know. Please, a round of applause as he comes up here. Mr. Cyril Stober.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is the panel discussion, and I do understand that as we introduce the panelists, their brief bio would be displayed on the screen behind me here. So let me start off by introducing our first panelists, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, a former minister.
CEO, the Eugenia Abu Media. As a media consultant, Eugenia Abu has consulted for several organizations, including UN Women, ECOWAS, NEDC, and Trust TV, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, Eugenia Abu.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce our next panelist, Dr. Linus Okorie.
He has developed 15 leadership brands and established the Godney Leadership Center in Abuja, with plans for a global leadership center in Imo State. He has inspired over 300,000 individuals through his programs and millions through media appearances. An influential speaker and author, Okorie holds a master's degree in organizational leadership and has completed programs at Harvard University and through the U.S. Department of State. Recognized with honorary doctoral degrees and inductions into prestigious organizations, he continues to shape leadership in Nigeria and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, Linus Okorie. Linus Okorie.
Thank you. The fifth panelist for this discussion segment is Malam Lanre Issa Onilu, who is the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. Standing in for him is his Special Advisor, Partnerships and Programs. Let me introduce Anthony Erumosele.
Lanre Issa Onilu, armed with 30 years work experience in image management and media industry. Lanre Issa Onilu has vast experience in corporate and political communications, crisis communication, policy analysis, and development issues. He studied mass communication at University of Lagos and proceeded to West Virginia University, Virginia, USA, for a master's certificate in integrated marketing communications. He has also attended several seminars and conferences within and outside the shore of the country. Onilu is an associate member of the Public Relations Society of America and member of the Public Relations Society of New York, a corporate member of the International Communications Conference at the Baruch College, State University of New York, USA, an associate member of the Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, APCON. He has worked as a media relations executive and journalist for 15 years and as a policy and development issue strategist, public perception analyst, and communication planner in the last 10 years. The Kwara-born politician served as news editor for the Comet newspaper in Lagos before joining This Day newspaper as assistant editor, where he rose to the post of group politics editor. Ladies and gentlemen, Lanre Issa Onilu.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Now that we have a fully constituted panel, let us begin to look at the issues of this discussion. The central theme, of course, is civility. And so we'll kickstart with Dr. Ezekwesili. And we would want you, if you will, to put in perspective for us the role of education in fostering civility in Africa. Yes, you could use that, right? Just,
thank you so very much, Compare. You've become an institution, right? Thanks for your service to the nation. I want to recognize the patron of the Etiquette Africa, as well as the leaders of the organization. Ms. Anitene, did I get that correct, Ladi? Yes. So I want to say that I didn't know you were in any way associated with this, Obong, but you know, I have a niece of my husband, my niece-in-law, Chikodi Rine. She wouldn't give me any peace concerning this event. One or two of you know how crazy my schedule is. It was impossible. But it was less expensive to come and do this than to say no to Chikodi. So in my thinking, it was better to take this option of coming out here and doing this for Chikodi and for her friend who happens to be a student of the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, Ebedade Omino or something. She's probably somewhere here or not. But I love the young women of our continent who, no matter what you say, are unrelenting in pursuing a focus on issues that matter to them. And this particular issue that they are focused on is really critical for articulating where our continent goes. I'm excited at the fact that I find the school children to be the majority of this audience. And so when you say the role of education in fostering a culture of civility in our continent, one thing is for certain: you cannot enter that conversation without first articulating the three critical elements that are considered to be the reason. Everything that you do must have a raison d'être, as the French would say, the reason for it being. And these three for education are cognition, so cognitive capabilities. And number two are affective capabilities. Number three are the aptitude capabilities. And so the affective capabilities, that's the realm within which the civility that we're talking about today falls. Affective capabilities are often considered not as important as a child coming home with 100% in English and mathematics. They are considered as not as important as the physical aspects of education, where the dexterity of a child to be able to construct things, use the hand and make things, and, as part of the education process, are regarded. However, it turns out, and that's where I really want the young ones to listen. In our generation, people cared about IQ, the intelligence quotient of the individual. At a certain time later in the same generation, but toward the generation that came after us, the world of education and corporate boardrooms began to care so much as whether people have what we call EQ, emotional quotient, that is emotional intelligence. But guess what the world is moving in the direction of, because of the proliferation of technology that can solve mathematical problems and all of those problems that we needed human beings to calculate. We don't need you to calculate so many things anymore, because the algorithms will take those numbers and in a chip they would calculate it. So the fact that you can do mathematics so well is not what gives you a cutting edge. In your generation, what gives you a cutting edge in order to be recognized as one who can take their position in any place of distinction and authority around the world is what is now known as LQ. LQ is actually love quotient. Can you believe it? That love, as in when they say to you, love your neighbor as yourself, has become central and core to the kinds of tools and skills that education must give to our children. The reason that love has come center stage is that one thing that machines cannot do is to love. Machines can do all kinds of solutions for us, but machines cannot answer ethical questions, because ethical questions are at the center of the capacity of an individual to look at the other individual and care about them enough to say that I love them, and to say that I would respect their point of view, that I would respect what they stand for, that I would engage in disagreement with them, but not in a disagreeable manner, that I would object to them, but not in an objectionable manner. It is education on the basis of values, values-based education. They transfer these skills and this capacity to have the character to see that healthy debate is a culture of education. In societies that have made progress, in societies that have been able to galvanize the diversity of thoughts, the diversity of ideas, and therefore create innovation for development, it has been on the basis of everything that I said. And so for your generation, when your parents talk about values, listen to them with such depth of understanding, because it is what will distinguish you from the rest of your generation in going as far as possible.
Thank you so very much. And there are one or two aspects which we'll delve into much later, and that would be the place, again, of formal, informal education, and as you speak, values, and expanding the concept of love for one's nation, love for another human being. But we'll come to that in a moment or two. Let me move on to Dr. James Komolafe, and simply, the opening question I'd put to you is, let's look at the effects of incivility on both the physical and mental health of the African.
Thank you so very much. What a pleasure being here. Mr. Siristoba is one media voice I have heard for the last 4 decades. And when I heard he was going on retirement, I had to take up a little intercession that this voice must not be missing out in our radio. Please, a round of applause for Mr. Siristoba. When I heard my name after Dr. Mrs. Obiageli Ezekwesili being mentioned, I was wondering whether there was another James Komolafe. I think the organizers of this program hasn't been fair on me to have brought me to sit right beside my boss, my mentor, my leader, and the one who have equipped me to be what I am today. Please give it to Dr. Mrs. Obiageli Ezekwesili, my boss. And Ma, can I have your permission to fire?
You don't need my permission, James.
Thank you so very much. I got it invariably. Please celebrate my boss, Dr. Mrs. Obiageli Ezekwesili. Now, Mr. Siristoba just asked a question, and I listened very carefully to the address, the special address, and the way our daddy ambassador rounded up the speech, summarized everything I came to say. Please celebrate the ambassador. Thank you so very much, sir. Celebrate daddy also. I found everything they said wrapped up in behavior. Madam have just spoken and drew a nexus between education and love being the bottom line and the basis. In the School of Articulation and Behavioral Alignment Resources and the Institute of Behavioral Alignment of Nigeria, we see love as very germane on a necessary condition, but never sufficient. Why am I saying this? It is one thing to even be an advocate of the love message, but the question is this: do you really love yourself? It has to begin from you. The individual becomes the pivot for which we can network a better society through civility. So, in the alignment quotient, 3 P's are very germane. And what are the 3 P's? The first P is personality. Until we come to terms with who we really are as individuals, our personal concept in terms of the mental health, who we are in our minds, the emotional health, who we are by the virtue of our relationships and responsibilities, the physical health, who we are in our body as individuals, and the spiritual health, who we are in relation to the one who made us, and our social connect or disconnect, as it may be, with one another. So when I don't love myself to the point that I can pick up a weapon and do some bad behavior against myself, then you won't need to fault me for not loving someone else. So, the bottom line is this. How well have we as individuals taken time to look at our holistic health? Health by UN definition is no longer absence of sickness or disease and all of those other debilitating variables. It's all about your capacity to manage yourself as you package to manage in order to avoid the damages. And so where you are able to take care of your mental life, who are you upstairs? And that's why I must say in cyber resources, we check up from the neck up in order to be sure you are good neck down. A man who is not good neck up will be bad neck down. And when he is bad neck down, he's going to go berserk, leg forward. So before I'm done on this note, can you do your hand like this, if I may ask? Because once this can become an integer in our private and public life, then we are going to go somewhere. Can you say, even my boss is doing it, or what it is? Can we say, we'll check up from the neck up?
We'll check up from the neck up.
In order to be good neck down.
In order to be good neck down.
And when I am good neck down, I will be great leg forward. Please celebrate yourself for attending the class. I will issue a certificate after now. So what is the second variable for a P? When I discover my first P, my mental health is taken care of. I am good to go, hook, line, and sinker. My emotional health will be taken care of. My physical health will be taken care of. And, of course, my relationship with God will be taken care of. That is the health variable, my personal concept. The second P is my potential. That is my strength variable, where my skills, my competency, my capability mode and model at the same time becomes very integral. What do I know? Why personality talks about who I am, so that I can be myself. Potential says, what do I have? And I think the crux of misbehavior and incivility in Nigeria and Africa stems from these two. Behave. I become myself. That's my being, my personality, my be factor. Then the have is what I have by potential. So when I join be in my person to have in my potential, what do I have? I behave. So when that order becomes a miss out, then we are in for deficit and incivility. So in other words, I must find out who I am first and appreciate that personal construct in order to discover what I have. So what is corruption? It is my aptitude to discover and to get what I need to get first before becoming myself. So when you find the true order, behave. You join the two, you behave. Now, in a situation where you have before you be, please, can you mention for me or pronounce for me have and be? What do you have? Now, can you see misbehavior even in this hall? So, the capacity to become yourself and identify with your personal value construct as a matter of priority, and then finding out what you have will make you original version. And when you are original version of yourself, then you can transact. Then you can do critical engagement. And in critical engagement, you do three things. You interact, to interface, in order to intervene. And that is where the productivity sequence comes in.
Right.
And so lastly, the third P is production, When you join your personality, your health, to your potential, your strength, of course, you will get your wealth, and that is productivity. I beg to stop here.
All right, thank you so much. Profound, Dr. Komolafe, and we shall relate all of these to being civil. But let me come to my friend, the next panelist, and this is about the role of parenting in cultivating civility in Africa.
Thank you, Cyril. I believe that the speakers before me have basically set the tone for the topic I'm about to speak about. Family is the smallest unit of society. And so let me leave that for you to ponder while I crave your indulgence to recognize His Excellency Obong Victor Atta for deciding to stand by an area of field where many people don't really care about. Part of Nigeria's shambolic behavior in certain areas, some of our citizens, not the nation, because it's the citizens that make up the nation, is as a result of really not caring about these things that we should care about. No matter how brilliant you are, if you don't have etiquette, I don't consider you as brilliant at all, because then you don't have all the things that His Excellency, my brother, and one of the finest in the diplomatic field, had spent so long talking about. You won't have empathy. Corruption will mean nothing to you, and you will have no patience. You have no friendliness, and you are always quarrelsome. Part of the things he talked about are really some of the things that would form the bedrock, and myself and Cyril and our other panelists, Ms. Christy Adejo, we kept on saying, His Excellency the Ambassador has spoken for us already. What are we going to talk about when it's our turn to speak? Your Excellency, what a well-researched, well-thought-out keynote that was. We thank you so much. Obong Victor Atta, His Excellency, the former governor, spent his time telling us in stories the way in which we have thrown our values through the window. I think it's important for us to reminisce and remember some of the great stories that he told about how we suddenly behave in a manner in which my friend Professor Patu told me will describe as anyhowly, anyhowly behavior. And in speaking to that, it's really about how you say some things. Koimin, in Yoruba language, koimin means it doesn't matter. Etiquette is about ensuring that things are meaningful. If they say, let's put this chair on top of that chair and make it look ugly, so a few Nigerians will say, koimin. In other words, it doesn't matter. Why should it not matter? This is the time more than any other time that it should matter. I'd like to salute Mrs. Ogogo Musa's delegation from Depoa, the wife of the Chief of Defense Staff, a very civil, very proper woman, has sent an entire delegation here. Would like to thank you for coming. Thank you. I believe that it is impossible to have the convener, Etienne, who is here, without having somebody who brought her up to believe that etiquette matters, values matter, respect matter. Her mother is here. Please, let's celebrate the mother of the convener. She doesn't look like anybody's mother, but that's a conversation for another day. My brother Femi Adesina from the police and the FRSC, and very distinguished personalities that are here. And of course, our most important personalities here today, the students. We thank you. Wave your hands. See how beautiful they look. And our other panelists are also here. They are important to this event, and I salute all of you. Why do we talk about parenting in etiquette? I started by saying the family is the smallest and most important unit of society. Our parents matter. They are the ones that form us. And one of the things I say in this millennial and digital age is if we accept to be formed. His Excellency talked about how social media is responsible most of the times for some things that are described by those who are watching social media critically as stupidity of a certain group of people. Why, for example, would you decide that lying on a plank at a 14th story building to show off to your friends on the internet that you are very good and you want more followers, why would you take such a risk? It's called planking. And when they put it on the internet, it's like a drug. All the children want to be like that. And from that planking, a young man fell 14 floors and died, of course, trying planking. For social media following, for internet sensation, people do the most risky things today. The question would be, where are the parents in all of this? And a lot of the times, the parents have spoken and are tired. Some of the founders of social media do not allow their children go there. And I share quite a bit with Dr. Komolafe because I have a certificate in psychology. So I know that social media can be very addictive. And as a parent, if you don't manage it, it will then manage your entire family. For young people, they know that if they decide to go browsing, they can be on it all day long, all night long. And sometimes parents have to open the door at 2 a.m. to say, put your phone away. What does it prevent you from doing? The communication companies that are looking for clickbait and they want young people to become their customers, give them free opportunities in the night. So between midnight and 5 a.m., you can download free music, so they prevent you from sleeping. How are you going to pass your exams? And if you're on it all night and you're a worker, how are you going to stay awake? But let's leave that for a bit and go to the fact that parenting is a very special word. And I would like our distinguished participants today to take note of the fact that you're a mother of 4 children, 6 children, that is not your limited parenting. That the children that you speak to outside of you are also your children. So I would like to expand the word parenting to include people you are mentoring. Obon Victor Atta, for example, His Excellency has decided to mentor the convener. Without wanting to mentor him, is there any reason why he will be here? Without believing in the cause, is there any reason why he will be here? He therefore has become her parent. So let's expand the word. And while that is going on, let us take a look at what mentoring can do. I always believe is the unexplored area of field for fast-tracking development in Africa. How many people have we mentored? How many people have we taken under our wings? The millennial generation, the Gen Z generation, they describe us as ancestors. Once you are over 60 or even over 50, you are an ancestor. The rest of them are the happening things. But I've learned over the years, having gone to the United Nations Institute of Aging in Malta, that intergenerational relationships are the best, where a young person teaches us technology and we teach them wisdom and values. Parenting is getting harder and harder by the day. Because today, children are no longer as pliant as we were. They now ask you a question with a question. When you ask them to do something, they ask you a question. So you must be beyond and above board to be able to engage. How are parents able to stem these things we see everywhere? Rudeness on the train. An Uber driver said to me one day, I was trying to go somewhere and I didn't have a driver, so my son got me an Uber driver. And I said to him, shall we greet? And the Uber driver said to me, greeting is free if you like. And he was old enough to be my 3rd child. So I waited to get to my destination. My executive assistant was very shocked. She thought, Mommy is not saying anything today, because I believe every opportunity is a teaching opportunity. And I said nothing. She was shocked because I wanted us to get to my destination. A quarter way through the journey, he said, I greeted you, or maybe you didn't hear. I ignored him. And when we arrived at my destination, I said to him in his language, if I were your mother, would you speak to me like that? Then he started lying down in his car. And I said, once you mess up the first time, it's difficult to call it back. Difficult. Now, we all are aware of how sometimes in trying to teach our children to be the best, we teach them to be disrespectful of their colleagues. We teach them to be unempathetic. We teach them not to have respect for space. We teach them not to have respect for other. And I'll give you an example. I tell my children all the time that when you are in class and you know the answer to a question, put your hand up and answer. The next question, put your hand up and answer. That is your quota. If you know all 5 questions, I do not expect you to try to answer all 5 questions. Because in your class, there will be those who are cutting edge, the most brilliant, maybe 20%. Another 30 or 40% are in the second class, trying, doing well. And the last group are the ones who don't even know what's going on. They don't understand. And you don't give them a chance every time your hand goes up. What it means is you have disrespected the rest of your class. You want to be the only one in front. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's the reason why Obong Victor Atta expressed to us today our innate character, especially in our country, that suggests that we should leave the plane when the plane has not finished taxiing. And then you are not in the front row, but you want to get ahead of the people as if the plane is going to, something is going to happen. Or you are trying to shunt when they ask you to queue up to board the plane as if the plane will leave you behind. Or you are on a queue trying to buy food, and the first thing you do is think everybody else in front of you is an idiot, and therefore you want to get ahead of them. Or you have found yourself in traffic and there's a whole line of cars and you think everybody else waiting are stupid. Then you start driving on the side. Ask traffic wardens what they see. Then you begin to jump culverts. It's a national problem. And some of it is from our past. Some of it is from our homes. I teach in churches and I teach at a university. So I encounter young people a lot. And one day, after a youth group have finished speaking in church, they asked me to address them. And one young lady put up her hand and said, "Sorry, ma, I have a question. What do you do if your mother is never there for you to speak to?" I've asked her, I have something important. First month, second month, she's not there. In the third month, I went to her while she was preparing to go to work, and she said, "Write it and put on the table."
Let me come to the 5th panelist. And I'd say it wasn't an accident to choose someone from an agency that is concerned with reorientating people and pushing for the right values among the citizens. And Anthony Rumosele is standing in for the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. And so to him it's pretty straightforward. And that is the effects of incivility on the reputation of Africans. Of course, we all know how we are generally regarded globally.
Oh, thank you very much. At National Orientation Agency, we have what we call the National Value Charter, and which makes for 7 duties of citizens to government and government to citizen. And part of that is enshrined on it. Duty of citizen is respect towards elders and respect to self. And standing on that, Your Excellency, former governor of Akwa Ibom State, our keynote speaker for today, Ambassador Usman Sarki, thank you very much for the wonderful expository lecture you gave us this morning. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the convener, thank you very much. And a wonderful panelist, opportune and privileged to sit to discuss this afternoon with. On behalf of myself and the Deputy Director, the Ethics and Value National Orientation Agency, Mrs. Ebele Okonkwo, and my colleagues here with me, I bring you greetings from the Director General, National Orientation Agency. So talking about this incivility that is seen among youth in Nigeria, one of the reasons that can cause lack of development in the society. It is not far-fetched to understand that these issues of not being civil have grave effects on our national reputation and also international reputation. If you look at the world today, Nigerians, everybody will agree that we are wonderful people and we have experts, and they will say the most intelligent in the world. But oftentimes, when you discuss with people across board, world over, you tend to understand that this praise, you don't know if it's to be excited about it or not, because it is actually tilted towards being great in a negative light. And these are not the things that we are known for. I remember growing up in the village, especially with my grandparents also. There's this duty of care I was made to understand when it comes to child upfront learning and upbringing, that you should be able to avoid this or imbibe this to have to represent your family in this community and in the society. So even as we grow up as youths, speaking to youth also, and adolescents and young persons present here, we begin to understand that these values are continuously eroding our society today. Why is it so? Some people will say technology, advent of a lot of things that are taking the minds of youth away from what they ought to be doing. But we continue to preach, especially as an agency that talks about public education, community engagement, to bring to light what we should imbibe as citizens to remain real Nigerians, to bring back what we are known for. And I believe as Nigerians, when we talk about Nigerians, what should come to mind should not be people that are known for internet fraud or criminality. So incivility are the result of all these issues that we have in the society, so mentioned. So why do we talk about this issue today? Is because it is very important we maintain etiquette and maintain basic ethics and hold dear to our national value and what binds us together, which as Nigeria, let me not even go to Africa, we are known for. So there are a lot of borrowed culture when it comes to incivility. Africans are actually known to be very respectful. Nigerians are known to respect their elders, to fear their senior actually. But we are beginning to graduate to a lot of xenocentrism, believing others people's culture, giving it precedence over us. And this is issues that we continue to talk about even as an agency, and this is what we try to preach to the community, even using our various community mobilizers and using the robust resources and manpower we have at the agency to partner with agencies like Etiquette Africa to take this message in terms of ethics and value to reach areas and general populations in Nigeria to ensure that every trait that breeds incivility will be thing of the past in Nigeria. We'll begin to embrace things like honesty, integrity, respect, things that makes for civility, respect for others, duty of care for yourself and the nearest person in your community, so that we will begin to see a country that we so desire and want to be. Maybe I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Let me return to you, Dr. Ezekwesili. I know you had pressed for time and you probably would be leaving us after your next comment. So I'd like you, in your closing comments, to also take this into cognizance. Many years ago, not many families had access to formal education, but that didn't mean that people were not trained to be civil. Fast forward to now, formal education, and we have seen a high level of incivility, which you would attribute to so many other factors. So I'm thinking here, is there a contradiction? Those who didn't have formal education had civility imbibed. Those who have a high grade of formal education are losing out on that. What are we missing here? I'd like you to also factor that in your closing comments. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and it's been a delight listening to my co-panelists. I do want to state that the paper that was delivered by Ambassador Seriki is a good think piece for a foundational understanding of the definitional issues. Because if you get the definitional issues around civility, then it makes it a lot easier for you to connect it to so many other things, especially to connect it to why individuals can do well and why nations can do well, while other individuals don't do well and other nations don't do well. It's important that we should understand this causation and correlation between civility and every other thing that we would like to see in our individual lives and in our society, and of course our continent. To that specific question of how was it that informal education enabled us to pass on the tradition of civility, whereas formal education appears to have rolled all of that back. I would say that it is not just the disconnect between informal education and formal education, it's also the drivers of what social cohesion and community used to be in our society. You would see clearly, based on data, that the urbanization process of our continent, without any expansion in economic opportunities, and therefore a shrinking base of investment in the new ways of continuing to push learnings of different types, affected us greatly. Now, in the formal system of education, there was not any kind of thing built into it to support the idea that because children go to school, the role of the parent becomes unimportant. It actually builds on the concept of the basic socialization process of a child being the times that they spend at home. They spend more time at home than they spend with the teachers. So it looks at that fundamental as really important. And so the idea of parenting that our dear Eugenia Abu spoke so eloquently about is one that we must bring back to a responsibility and a duty. And that perspective means that how do we prepare people for parenthood? In many societies, it is some of it is formal education, but a whole lot of it is coming from the religious organizations. It's coming from non-state actors that run the kind of thing that Etienne, I finally got it very correctly, is gathered us to talk about. This whole idea that community exists with certain fundamental core values that are not negotiable. I, for example, was raised by a dad who often said to us, we must not negotiate our values. Don't negotiate it. It doesn't matter what anybody puts on the table. It is not good enough to exchange your values for it. Many homes do not reflect this non-negotiability of values. Today, people are willing to transact. Whatever it is, oh yes, let's just go and do it. But if parents understand the concept, when the Bible actually puts it, and perhaps there is something in the Quran that talks about it also, but it says that when you raise a child in the way that they should grow, that when they grow, they will not depart from it. One of the key things that my dad taught us is that character is an everlasting currency. He says other currencies will go out of fashion. But you see, character, that's a currency you can spend and spend and spend. And I have seen it. The truth is that nobody is going to judge you by the Nigerian standard, children, because it's for you I came. Essentially, I came for you. Nobody is going to judge you on the basis of the Nigerian standard. They are going to judge you on the basis of global standard. And in global standard, there are just certain attributes that are non-negotiable. So please understand that your formal education, whereas people like me, as Minister of Education, looked at our curriculum and saw the gaps clearly, especially in the area of value-based learning. And we decided that we were going to just populate our training of the children so that they would have very strong fundamental values. But, you know, that curriculum was thrown off the window by the next time that another person was a minister of education. That you can't make progress on the basis of political fluidities affecting the things that are important for our generations. So clearly, we can't say, because informal education at the time, we had mostly informal education, people were more respectful, people were more civil, therefore, let's go back to informal. Informal education is not sufficient as a basis for engaging the world today. But what societies have known how to do is to use their curriculum as a very strong definition of what minimum people must know. And by the way, when they design the curriculum, they design it on the basis of the fact that those who are leading are setting the tone. You can't go and design a curriculum, and yet the president of the country is not exemplifying the values that you put in the curriculum. The minister doesn't exemplify the values. The head teacher doesn't exemplify it. And then you come into the classroom and you say, children, hello. Today we're speaking about children are the most intelligent people on earth. They would roll their eyes and simply say, leave them, let them be yapping. You know, and that is a disconnect. So we don't want the disconnect. Therefore, we must set the tone. Because at the end of this conference, at the end of this convening, we should rightly ask ourselves, so what are the critical first set of steps that we do need to take? Instead of just badging at the children and saying you must have values, perhaps the easiest first step is to say, what is it about our society today that makes it difficult for people to be civil? The poor governance of our society makes it difficult for a lot of people to be civil. The poor governance, and that poor governance is being offered by the elders, not the children. You know, beating the children on their head and saying you don't have respect is a complete waste of time, and it's unfair, frankly speaking. We do need to ask for accountability of the elders for the behavior pattern that we see today. The truth is that demanding accountability is not an insult. We have now been taught by the intolerance of those that govern that when people are in a quest to know how they are being governed, why things are being done in certain ways, you now make a false equivalency of calling that disrespect. And the truth is that this generation of children, they don't send anybody. If you want respect, you should give them respectful governance. Respectful governance is to make judicious use of the resources of the society so that they can have the kind of quality education that, whether formal or informal, incorporates into it an agenda for being a proper human being. A proper human being, like Dr. Komolafe was saying, starts with just appreciating that there are just certain things you cannot do. My father used to call it that something is infradig. Infradignato. You dare not be found doing this. That starts with the individual. And so it starts with the individual, then it goes into the way that they interact in order to foster collaboration. The truth is that societies where collaboration and cooperation happen are at the higher level of the economic league table. Now, if we create chaotic, uncivil environments, it makes it difficult for collaboration and partnership to happen. We must see this as the most important conversation that we should gather our elders, and I love what you said about intergenerational dialogues. We need to get the elders, we need to get the young ones. The elders need to say, I am sorry to the younger ones. We messed up big time. That's why the society is the way it is. We're sorry for it. We could have done better. We haven't done as well. We're sorry for it. Forgive us. But we don't want you to repeat the same pattern. It is called humility. Humility is part of civility. Just being able to accept that we could have done things better, but we haven't done them, and there is a gap. But we're going to say to them, you're not competing against us. We are on our way out. You're going to be competing against the rest of the world. Therefore, we need you to just have these skills, because these tools will take you further than you could ever have imagined. Those kinds of sessions that we have today, in fact, I would have loved to have some of those children as our own co-panelists. They would have been better panelists for me than all of you. You know, because they would throw things at us, and then we would show them how we can take it. You know, being able to take it. And sometimes just taking it, knowing where the other person is coming from in what they are saying to you, is also part of bringing us to a place of civility. I have to apologize. I gave this particular program 1 hour, but you can see that I have stayed beyond 2 hours, as a matter of fact. Now I must really have to leave. Otherwise, I would be uncivil to the other meeting that I must be at. So I thank you very much, and God bless you. I look forward to continuing to engage with our dear young daughter, and to see how we can support the quest that you're on. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obieze-Kwesili. We thank you. Thank you so very much, and let's appreciate her and, as she takes her leave, and thank you for your input. And
sorry, Cyril. I wanted to say there will be a few comments that I would make when Dr. Obieze-Kwesili has left the room.
All right.
And we will send those messages to her.
Right.
So she knows that I'm going to respond to some of the things she said.
Right, fantastic. We'll do that. And so, thank you so very much. We just have a few more minutes to go for this session. And so, what we'll be doing right now is taking your closing comments, which I should expect to be as brief as possible. Let's start that process with Dr. James Komolafe. And you have taken us through what should be the correlation between the physical and the mental health as we strive towards achieving civility. And so I'd just like you to conclude on that in the next few minutes.
Thank you so very much. I'd like to conclude on this note, given the foregoing that this conference should end with a conclusion and a resume to send to the critical leadership and the current leadership as I advocate for a national policy framework of behavioral alignment for national development, so that we can go back to the crucibles to ensure that the upcoming generation of leadership, not essentially by party politics, but by their home upbringing, imbibe a culture of civility down to the grassroots. And how do I mean? We are going to advocate for a tripod hub of operation. And what is this tripod? It's a triangle where you have at top of the triangle character. Can we say character? Thank you, students. At least you are following me. So I have the popular majority in this election. So what is atop the triangle? Character. We must mainstream character as a major bulwark to civility in Africa, beginning from Nigeria as a template. Then, as we cascade it down as optimists who believe in positivism, we should see the base of the triangle to the right as competence. What is in the base to the right? Competence. Character alone will not do the job. We must go ahead to negotiate for competency. What do I know? What have I learned?
How has that been lost as we're growing up? So I'd like you to add that to the comments you'd make as you close, and the ones you'd respond to by the former minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Parenting is a critical factor of social development. While I had already said that family is the smallest unit in a society that makes or breaks that society, and it's so important, I'd like to welcome and commend, of course, the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, who took time off to visit the American-led school in Abuja, where a child was bullied. She left her job and believed that that was an extension of her job, and showed up in that school. And I think it's a sign of leadership that you should understand that when it comes to children, when it comes to women, when it comes to family, the Ministry of Women Affairs is really in a position to make some changes. And I'd like to thank you so very much for that action that you took that warmed our hearts. If we could, all of us will storm the school, but you went on behalf of all of us. I'd also like to welcome Kairos Hoff, one of my favorite persons in terms of building in Abuja. We thank you for making the time to show up. Now, having said so, as a young lady in 1979, when I first entered ABU Zaria, 1977, 78, 79 for the A-levels, and then 1979 to 81 for the degree. We lived in Zaria, but I was in Queen of Apostles College, Queen Amina College in Kaduna between 72 and 76. And therefore, our school was also near where my parents lived. Now, what it meant is that while I was in Zaria, there were parties in Kaduna. My greatest fear was that my father will turn up in Zaria and I will not be in school. So I never went. I don't know how to explain it any better. That the shadow of your parents, the foreshadow of your parents, and the words they put in your ears remain. Today, social media says, don't mind them. And that's a challenge. While we are able to hold our parents accountable today, in the past, I couldn't interrupt my father when he was speaking. Neither could I interrupt my mother. It didn't mean that I didn't have a different view. It meant that I waited for them to finish and therefore interjected them with some measure of respect to say what I wanted to say. But today, children interrupt you. Then they challenge you. Then they dare you to do whatever you like, because social media has told them that their parents are irrelevant. In Nigeria, parents are relevant. In Africa, parents are relevant. Maybe not in the UK, maybe not in the US. But if you ground your child well in Nigeria, and she goes to school in the UK, she will behave like Cyril. Every time, it will be as if you are standing behind them, telling them you can't do that. Parenting is critical where we have an intellectual society today, a digital society, where today I can play with my children and they can speak to me in a manner that suggests that I'm their friend. That's what has changed a little bit. But if you're a thief in 1923, being a thief is the same thing in 2024. If you are disrespectful in 1923, it's the same thing. If you are kind in 1923, what has changed? They said they are different. Technology only has changed, but the values have remained the same. If you are kind, if you are passionate, if you're a fool, it's the same thing in 1923 as it is today in 2024. Now, I make this comment because I think we miss it when we believe that, oh, let's give them a chance. I've mentored over 500 children informally over the last 4 or so years. They are not my children, but I will say sit properly. I would say don't go out naked, Because, let's be fair, your nakedness can only take you to the bed. So if you begin to do cleavage, nobody can see your brain. They can only see your breast. Pardon my French. That's the way it is. But because social media tells them you have to show skin, our young ladies think that the best way to go to an important meeting is to be dressed in a very stupid way. What does that mean? Or the boys are wearing sagging. You see that sagging in America, it's because they take the belt of a criminal when he's going into jail. So his trouser drops and it became fashion. It means you are a thug. All right? I just saw on the internet a young lady wore tattoo all over her body, her face, everywhere. And she showed up at TJ Maxx for a job in the US and they didn't give her. And somebody else intervened and said, you know what? You did it because you want to be different. In normal society, they won't hire you as the face of TJ Maxx. But our young ladies and young boys think you can tattoo your whole body and show up in Ministry of Education for minister to hire you. It's impossible. Because those things are not things that we hold dear as a society. So while you are looking at America and looking at the UK, you must remember that you give respect to whom respect is due. Respect what? Begets respect. That is so important. And I think you want to dress as you wish to be addressed. Today's young people do not understand the meaning of delayed gratification. Within the political circle, the youthful slogan is, for youth, now, now. What does that mean? You should give them the money now, now. Nobody wants to change your tire for you on the street. You are in trouble because that person thinks if you don't pay them, they won't help you with your tire. What happens to humanity and brotherhood and relationship? Cyril, I come from the background of a mixed background, and I know that you come from same. In the middle belt, we're like that. My grandfather was an Alhaji. I'm a die-in-the-wool Catholic. My father was a Catholic. My cousins are Muslims. At Salah, I get more rams than anybody else in Abuja. And at Christmas, they get a lot of cake. What would make me today go and stand on the main road and insult another religion? Why should a parent tell a child that that religion is very bad? What would make me insult my cousins who are Muslims? What would make my cousins insult me? They come to my house at Christmas to eat. Now, put that away. What about ethnicity? What are we teaching our children? Once the TV comes out, you say, these people, just foolish people. Tomorrow that child will inhabit it. I have a course where we teach children in the last 18 or so years called the Treasured Writers. We teach them writing, kindness, and so on, a summer boot camp. And we have icebreakers. So when the children come, we switch. If you sit beside someone, we'll move you so that you can mix with another child. An 11-year-old, sat beside a 9-year-old after we had switched them. And this is what he said. I am not going to sit near her. I don't like her name. I don't like her religion. I don't like her tribe. I don't like her at all. 11! You think he picked it on the main road? He learned it from his parents. Biases. I speak 8 languages, 5 of which is Nigerian. And for me, every tribe has its heights, has its lows. You cannot just wake up in the morning and write in the media that one tribe is useless. You can't do that. Or tell your children. The media needs to watch it. Our children are looking at those papers and TV, and when you put your biases in those places, it doesn't help. I tell my staff when I used to be ED at NTA, when you go out, talk to both men and women. Don't come back and say you didn't see a woman. Are the women dead? Only the men are talking about issues, and it looks like women don't understand. I say, go out and find a woman. Then when you get to the women say, talk to Dr. Komolafe, I don't want to talk. Women must stand up and be counted so that our children can see that we're also experts. Chris Anyanwu was petroleum correspondent in NTA. Moni Adebayo was defense correspondent in NTA. Many young girls wanted to be those women. Me and Cyril read the news for the longest. Many people walk up to us and say, it's because of you that I read mass communication. Parenting is important. Mentoring is important. Teaching our children that no religion is better than the other is important. Teaching them to be kind to their fellow human being is important. And it is critical that the children themselves understand that the Bible says, honor your father and your mother so that your days will be long. Don't listen to internet that says you should abuse your father. It cuts life short. I'm done.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Dr. Linus Okorie, the mantle.
So I would like to share two stories in concluding my thoughts this afternoon. A couple of years ago, I had the honor to have been nominated by the American government in a program they call IVLP, which means since 1932, they choose some outstanding people around the world and bring them to America for 1 month to understand what makes America work from the leadership development perspective. And here I was in Washington, D.C. with my 27 of my colleagues from all over the world. And America had brought 50 young people, the age between 17 and 18, 16, 17, and 18, from 50 states in America. And 2 of them were seated on my table. So they shared them amongst all the tables. And then a young man, 17 years old, his name is Aaron. And he asked me, Mr. Linus Okorie, what do you do for a living? And he asked so respectfully, but very assertive. And I said to him that I'm raising leaders for Africa. The next thing he said just shocked me, culture shock. He said, Mr. Linus Okorie, can I and my friends raise money for your work? So at 17, I went to Atlanta. He sent me an email. He said, I've discussed with my friends, and we're waiting for your feedback. I've even copied them the email. Immediately, I thought about a 17-year-old, basically mostly in Nigeria. In that sense, somebody could wash your car, and the next thing they might ask you is for a tip. So volunteerism is a concept that has grown in America because they've invested so much in those young people. America spends $180 billion for leadership development in their budgets yearly, cut across states, local governments, or counties, as the case may be. In another case, I walked into the classroom. If I was a Harvard class, it was the Act and Practice of Leadership. Experts from all over the world in leadership development, we had gathered to discuss the future of leadership. What will leadership development look like in the future? Right in that class, ladies and gentlemen, I started doing the statistics of who and who, where they're coming from. 11 came from Australia. In that particular class, some came from Canada, some came from India, some came from even Brazil, some came from Singapore. In the whole of Africa that has deficit of leadership capital to the greatest maximum you can imagine, only 2 came from Africa. 1 from Morocco, 1 from Nigeria. Yet, in the next school, which is a business school, in the Harvard community, almost every 10 persons in that class, you'll find at least 3-4 Nigerians, and then some part of Africa. You can think a little bit that it then means that the pursuit for materialism, the pursuit for love of money, and all of these things, thinking about self-comfort, self-pursuit, is the most dangerous path to go if we must talk about civility. Do you know who I am concept is enough, to get into a competitive spirit where everybody is competing, not for impact, craze for money, craze for position, craze for all of that. And the young people are watching. If we want to change that tide, a great man said, we're blind until we know that nothing is worth the making. If it doesn't make the man, why builders these cities glorious? Why man unbuilded goes? We want to change this country and build a country where, or an Africa where civility, respect, order, intelligence, impact, the common good concept will thrive. We must begin to invest in the leadership capital of every young person, every child, from our families, from the school system. There has to be an investment in leadership and etiquette. That investment, teaching those young people how to respect humans, teaching those young people how to be the best they can be, teaching them how to serve one another, the ordinary courtesy of opening doors, or have your way first. All those little things, if you don't teach them, nothing will come. We must create an outcome in our minds. Our vision must see a future that works. Abraham Lincoln said, I do not care about who my grandfather was. I only care about who his grandson is going to become. So let's assume that we have made mistakes in the past, each and every one of us. Why don't we start today that Etiquette Africa is now calling us to say, hey, wait a minute, can we reinvent? Can we change the way things are done in this country? To be very honest, therefore, my concluding thought will be that if Nigeria can put great investment in not just educating for technical certificates or for professional certificates, we must begin to put in our curriculum, like never before, sound leadership, focus, and etiquette-focused education that has components that will help and inspire leaders to transform. For 31 years of my life, I have been in this course, and I have met all manner of humans. I've met people with 5 degrees with low leadership capital.
Okay.
I've met with all manner, and I can tell you the truth, that the secret will not be in the papers. It will be in the new attitude, the new leadership capital, the new behavior patterns. And at the end of the day, we'll build a society that is loving one another, respecting one another. And at the end of the day, we'll have value for one another. And then this society will work because we all are coming together to make it work. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Linus Okore. And bring to a conclusion, Anthony Iromosele.
All right. Thank you very much. On a final note, I would like to reiterate and just speak briefly on what the highly respectable media veteran that I believe Nigerians is lucky to have, and talking about Eugenia Abu, when she made mention of the family units in terms of instilling values and ethics on the child, because it's from making of these children they grow to adults, and everything they've been taught with, understanding the value, the culture, the folk ways that their community is governed by, and their immediate family, that's rules and principle that has been set by the head of their family, talking about the parents. It's imbibing these key core values that when they grow up, they shun every vices that makes for incivility, like we see in our society, majorly that has been talked about, corruption. So even as she was talking, it coursed through my mind when I remembered a theory that was propagated by Badura when he talked about child behavior. And in his theory, he had an experiment where he brought in children of various race and background. He kept them in a play place. He left the children there. They were watching them through a screen. They were just chilling, playing on their own. However, he came behind them to drop hammers and teddy bears behind them. Then he played on a screen for them, not a cartoon, but adults hitting teddy bears with hammers. Then they put the screen off and made the children, remove the veil, made the children to see the teddy bear, rubbers, hammers, and everything on the floor. In less than 5 minutes, all the children started hitting the teddy bears with the rubber hammers. What is this trying to say? Just following what she said, that in our various homes, how we talk to children, how we talk to people around us, especially, sometimes it's not the words they listen to, it's how you act. The experiment just simply says, children, watch what you do over what you say. So what we are trying to say is that when it comes to the issues of ethics, issue of values in our society, it is very important, as a co-panelist that talk about leadership rightly mentioned, it is important that its leaders show exemplary leadership, not just by talking about ethics, values, or living right. You need to show this behavior so that when it is rightly seen, it will be easy for anybody that you are tutoring to live by that. In order not to waste any time, I would say it is important the convener continue to fight this cause, continue to raise the flag high with issues of ethics and value in Nigeria, because it is coming at the right time. We need to go back to our basis. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony Rumosele, who's standing in for the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. Well, this brings to a conclusion the first set of discussions, and as just we wrap up the discussants, the panelists have all drawn attention to what I think we should take very seriously. And if I might just cap it up by saying, isn't it amazing that in this day and age, we still have parents who write exams for their children? They do. And then we talk about imbibing ethics and values. So that I would leave you with, as I ask you once more to appreciate the panelists, Dr. James Komolafe, Mrs. Eugenia Abu, Dr. Linus Okorie, and Anthony Erumosele, who stood in for the Director General of the National Orientation Agency, Madam Lanre Isaunilu. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please, all our panelists, please just stay on as I invite the delectable Lady Eti, our convener. She's got plaques for all of you. While we try to get ready with the plaques, it's my delight to recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Honorable Uju Kennedy Ohaneye. You're welcome, ma'am. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our dear students, looking at the composition of this panel, what I could see, Dr. Ezekwesili, I could see mentorship. When I listened to Dr. Komolafe, I heard behavioral mentoring. Mrs. Eugenia Abu had led us through parenting. Dr. Linus, of course, leadership. And from the National Orientation Agency, orientation and reorientation. But I'll talk parenting because I'm a product of good parenting. And by the way, please, let's celebrate Mrs. Frina Akpanusong in the house, the mother of our convener. It takes a great mother to raise a great daughter who have recognized a niche in society that has to be fixed. And she is smashing and doing justice to it. Please, another round of applause. Please, can I have the ushers here, please? Please, very quickly, please, very quickly. No, just here. Forward one of this. Well, the minister has already said what she has said. Please clap as we have the Honorable Minister for Women Affairs.
Thank you, everyone. I can't sit down waiting for protocol when I got something to do and I need to talk to my brothers, my sisters, my children, as I can see them over there. It's all about them. But I listened to the panel. Anyway, Your Excellencies, your executive members, Nigerians, children, everyone present, the media, welcome. I appreciate everyone and I plead to stand on the existing protocol. And my children here, I appreciate you people the most. Welcome, right? Can you hear me? Welcome. I listened to the panel, and I'm one person who believes that a child first becomes your child before that person becomes your friend. When you start making your children your friend at the early stage, I wonder how you'll be able, that means you spare the rod and spoil the child. Then at the same time, when a child turns out bad, 80% of fault lies on the parents. Because what we call juvenile delinquency, like we all know, is like an insanity if you don't know. So many children within that age, they don't know what they are doing. They don't understand it. The parents are the ones who will stand their feet firmly on ground and lead them well. Whatever it takes, you keep pushing until that child comes back to sanity, which most times they get to like 21 before they start realizing. But those their parents didn't do a good job, by the time they're 21, it's full of regrets. And I have one thing to tell parents. When you end up bringing up a bad child, you suffer it the most. She gets married, she's taken back home, back to you because of etiquette. The boy goes anywhere, he fights with his wife, he comes back home, he keeps tormenting you until that parent dies of either heartache or anything. And you say, what do I care? You're a grown-up. You pursue the person. As the person is out there disgracing you, a madman, the person that gets ashamed of what a madman does, are the family members, not the madman. So let parents first talk to ourselves before we talk to the children. Because you sit down, you allow your child walk into your fridge without consent, take something, eat without caring, it has branches of disorderliness and bad behavior. By the time that child grows, he doesn't think he needs your attention or your consent to do anything. And when a child starts doing some things without the consent of their parents, that is the beginning of bad behavior. Then if you find out any kind of movement on your child, of which you're supposed to be watching them all the time. I hug my children over 50 times a day. I started it from when they were babies. It's for a reason. So when they started anything like smoking, I'll be able to know. But they never knew that till date. Each time they come, they're used to it. Hello, mom. They kiss me here, they kiss me there. And I will hug them tightly. And I'll perceive. Immediately I see anything I don't understand, or if I perceive anything, some of them, when immediately they turn like 14 years, I started running drug tests on them. It's a psychological thing. I do it 2-3 times in a week. It costs me 15,000 each person, and I was doing it 3 times a week because if you take any drug, it lasts 2-3 days, it clears from your system. So that subconsciousness made them not to get involved because they know mom will always find out. And when I'm going, I go along with their father. And again, most mothers, when your husband is scolding a child, you want to buy your child's favor by saying, why are you doing this to this child? Why are you wicked? I get a lot of cases like that in Ministry of Women Affairs, where a woman will write to me, my husband wants to leave me, or my husband is doing this, doing that. Imagine the way he did this to a child, and he was beating the child, and I was like, why should you be beating a child like that? And I called the woman, I said, you spoiled your home. Don't think because you're a woman, I will support you to do things that will have a reversal effect on your child. That child belongs to both of you. Even if my husband is wrong while scolding my child, and maybe the child didn't do it, I will join him. You see, both of us will deal with you today. Why should you even do that in the first place? Who are you? You know, I will join him. After I go call another man, make you come. This one where you do no work. This child didn't do it, this, that. But my child will not know I did that. And my husband will now find a way to make amends. Or even call the child and say, sorry, I misunderstood you. Because respect is reciprocal. But most times, the mothers will want their children to think, or the other way around, that your child should love you more than the other party. You people are not competing over your children. You are there to bring your children well. Help them grow up and become good. because a spoiled child suffers a lot. And you don't expect that child to suffer alone and let you live your life happily. So both parties have role to play when it comes to issue of bringing up a child. No matter the amount of money, it's not issue of taking them to the most expensive schools. My children did not go to the most expensive schools. I rather reserve the money. I bought shares for them with that extra funds. And today, they're using the shares to do their trading, and they're doing well. So it's not about that. It's about the moral you impart on your children. It's about showing them that you stand together with your husband. It is we against them. You and your husband against your children. That is the best way to me. I may not be right, but this is the style I use, and I have 4 kids. None is giving me any stress. They're all lawyers and in the making, and I have no stress from them. I can use my hand and eye and talk to them. And when I tell them enter the car, they enter the car no matter your age. It's because of they know. Leave those crazy people who I've overheard my children while they were talking to you know the way they behave. Just keep quiet though. You know, they were talking to themselves. So it's because I stood firmly with my husband against them. So I thank everyone that came here today, and I want to give a special announcement that I was just coming from FCT High Court to meet the Chief Judge and other 6 judges, and lo and behold, mobile court has been confirmed for me, for women and children today. So my children, you know they have a jail for children, juvenile jail. I'm still telling you, no matter how they bring you up, help yourself and bring yourself up, because you commit any immoral crime, my mobile court will come after you. Trust me. And you're heading there. I will be bringing you food while you're there until you have some correctional things happening to your life, and I'll still come back and then plead for you to come out, and I keep watching you. So you bring up yourself. Don't depend solemnly on your parents alone. You probably help yourself to be a better person, build yourself up for the society and a better Nigeria. So let's please clap for the Chief Judge of FCT and the other chief judges that are coming up with this mobile court, because no matter how hard I want to work, no matter how prudent and active I am, without consequences for a crime, I cannot stop the crime, because it will be like a broken record. You keep shouting. But when somebody feels nothing mega, nothing will happen, the person will keep on doing that same thing, even at home, even everywhere. So the mobile court is the consequences that I have above every other thing if any crime is being committed. Thank you, everyone, and remain blessed.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma, when you mentioned that you would visit them in prison, please, I know the Honorable Minister skipped that part. She would also reward your good works and hard work. Please, a round of applause for the Honorable Minister. Very quickly, please, let's clap as we receive Aziba for a spoken word rendition. Please clap.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm so happy. It's such a pleasure standing here in your midst this afternoon. You'll permit me to stand on already existing protocols. So I've been here for at least an hour, and so when I was called upon to do this rendition on etiquette, you know, I've been in the panel, in the auditorium, and I've heard the theme of leadership resonate so strongly with me, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So I know that leadership is about becoming, and in most ways, this poem is about, you know, becoming as well. I hope you can connect with it. Over 10,000 years, our brains have shrunk. The smaller the size, the more efficient. Mainframe computers were not micro enough, so we made cell phones out of silicon chips. It's easy to mistake smaller for efficient. We cut down forests to make pencils, burn down bridges, only to realize too late that the rubble was never designed for crossing. When I think of smaller, I think of the countless times I have shrunk to fit into pocket editions of myself, carving miniatures who look like me, figurines who break at the earth's touch and break even further until the debris is the only version I recognize. Courage sits in my pocket. Riding on a pair of bipedal legs, I scroll through my Instagram feed, buried underneath unlived affirmations. How can I face eyes whose stares leap higher than vertigo's legs? Their gapes level mountains, prone on their bellies, I shrink to shield myself from the what-ifs. What if dinosaurs did not roar, but there were vocalists dying to be heard? What if caves are shaped like ovaries because life exists even in the darkness? I heard black holes are not really black. I heard corpse flowers bloom as they rot. I heard Saturn can float on water despite being the second largest planet, so why did we have to shrink to discover ourselves? I asked the sun how she breathes without oxygen, how a dead dinosaur plant comes to life at the taste of water, how new stars are formed, how new gods are born. The sun tells me it hurts to become. Serendipity is a drug I get high on to numb the pain. She tells me we can be empty yet full, ruptured yet whole, a plane wreck at the fringe of an uncut mountain. This pain is a valley, and we have sunk so low that we are level-headed. Finally, I understand why the sun burns so bright. We are not made of silicon chips. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my secondary school literature teacher used to say, I wish Wordsworth was still alive to teach me poetry. Sadly, he is not alive himself anymore. I would have told him, sir, I have found Aziba. She would teach me poetry. Please, another round of applause for that very beautiful rendition. Very quickly, we move to the next segment, our second panel session, and this session will be moderated by Ebaide. She is a lawyer, an advocate with interest in economic sustainability, climate change. She would be leading this segment. Please, a round of applause as she comes forward.
Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And, you know, Winston Churchill said something when he was arraigned and was asked to make some certain definitions to what he had said in the previous conversation. And he said something in his closing remarks. He said, it takes so much courage to come up and speak to people, but yet it takes even a greater courage to sit down and listen. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for yourselves. You've all been here since the morning, learning, unlearning, and relearning, and you've gone through the first panel session, we're here at the second panel session, and you're still here, just waiting to learn more. This is a huge feat, and I congratulate you all as Nigerians who are very definite on what you want to learn and what you want to take home. It's really important that you stay through and you get the best of it. Thank you so much. For the second panel session, we have a couple of speakers, very amiable speakers, who have traversed, the length and breadth of their expertise, and they're willing to share this expertise with us in line of the theme of this conference, which is actually the impact of incivility on Africa's development. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome the first panelist for this second session. Is no other person but Madam Christy Adejo. Please.
Christy Eleojo Adejo, FNIM. She's a management consultant, certified trainer, and coach with a distinct strength in human asset capacity development, leadership development, ethics, etiquette, and public speaking. A holder of the Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science and Master of Arts degree in International Law and Diplomacy. She has had an eclectic work life spanning university lecturing, mortgage banking, logistics, human resource management, training and development. A highly insightful professional, she has sat on the board of directors of various companies including a bank, an oil service company, a building construction company, and a score of social development initiatives. She has attended a number of leadership and management development